Today on CityCast Denver, Mayor Mike Johnston has been catching some heat lately. Whether it's his handling of the city budget or the layoffs a few months ago, his critics have been speaking out more and more. And that was before he re-upped the city's contract for flock surveillance cameras, which angered many Denverites and members of city council. So ahead of a citywide vote on the mayor's Vibrant Denver bond, we invited him back on the show to address his critics, answer listener questions, and share his big dreams for the pavilions. Today is Wednesday, October 29th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Mayor Mike Johnston, welcome back to CityCast Denver.
Thank you all so much for having me.
Producer Paul Karolyi.
In your fancy, famous basement.
Here we are, in the basement.
Paul's also here. Hi, Paul.
Hey, what's up?
Mayor Mike, what is your Halloween costume this year?
I knew you were going to ask me that because we were talking about this with my kids last night, and I haven't figured mine out yet. And my commitment this year was not to do a terrible Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock costume. So give me about 72 hours to at least have a day before costume, but I will have one.
Are you like a classic spooky stuff? Are you like a topical Halloween costume person? You have family?
Usually we've done family versions. Like we did Kiss one year, which was fantastic as the full band.
I love that.
I did like I was the Secret Service when my daughter was the president one year. That was a fun one. But now as my kids are getting older, they have less desire to do a costume with their parents. So I'm more of a free agent, which makes it tougher.
You know, I saw a costume as kind of like a fun local spin kind of thing. And I don't normally do costumes, but this one just looked very comfortable. The Sleepy Time Tea Bear.
Oh,
do you all know this? It's just like a nightgown and a red cap.
Well, yeah.
I could do that.
And sit in a recliner?
Yeah. Sit on a comfy chair.
I need the criteria is topical and possible to be assembled out of my closet at any moment.
Current wardrobe?
Yeah.
That's fair.
I do have a lot of, my dad ran a bar in the 60s, and I've kept all of his original clothes. And so I do have a great collection of fishnet shirts and random other items that could be used in costumes.
Guy at a dive bar.
Is that where the belt buckles come from?
Belt buckles and bolo ties were my dad's legacy. So I still have a couple of them that are my dad's that are my best.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Paul, I noticed you wore a belt buckle today.
I know, it's awesome.
I thought Alex was asking me, did you do that for the occasion? And no, I didn't even think about it.
It's just a random day in Denver. You wear a belt buckle. That's how it goes.
I have one from my grandpa.
There aren't that many accessories you can do as a guy, and belt buckles is a good option.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cufflinks are a little too much.
Yeah, I don't know any shirts
Jewelry.
that need those.
Big hat.
Giant hat.
I don't know. I don't really. Yeah.
I feel like hat you save for the stage when you're bald. That's like the hat era is when you're in your 70s.
Coming too soon.
Well, you know, what happens to the best of people? What are you going to do? Can't help it. You know? Well, enough about that. Let's get to the good stuff. So, Mayor, we have to talk about flock cameras, obviously.
I was excited about the chance to do that with you, actually.
Well, last week there was this big town hall over concerns about this surveillance technology, and hundreds of Denverites showed up. We also got a ton of questions from listeners, including this one. Now that you know such a large portion of the city opposes flock surveillance, how are you going to move forward in a way that is representative of the people who live here? This was an anonymous question because they work with you.
So I've talked to hundreds of Denver residents about this. We had the task force on it. We listened really carefully to what people's concerns were, and then we tried to address each of those. And so when you look at, there were kind of 4 or 5 really big concerns. One was a fear that federal agency like ICE or the FBI could access the database. That's entirely shut off. No federal agency can access it. There was a concern that a federal agent working separate from the agency could access it. No federal agent can ever now access the site. There was a concern about what about if an out-of-state sheriff, like a rogue sheriff in Texas, wants to track someone who's a migrant in Denver. Great, we shut off all access out of the state of Colorado to that. Then there was a concern, well, what about if you have a rogue sheriff in Colorado, in Grand Junction or El Paso County, that would break state law and be facing charges, but would try to access it for immigration purposes? Okay, great. So we shut off all access outside of the city and county of Denver. What about if people could search for an improper reason, like they're looking up someone that didn't commit a crime? We've now created, unique for us, what's called the Denver drop-down bar, which is you can only choose an enumerated crime in the city and county of Denver. So you couldn't say other. You couldn't say no reason for a search.
If you're a cop, you're saying?
If you're a cop. Now, the only person that can, because previously, say if you were a sheriff from Texas, you wanted to look for someone that was a migrant, you could just put, that wouldn't be a crime, but you could just put other or no category. Now, the only people that can access it are Denver police officers. Those Denver police officers are sworn to not ask someone's status. They haven't ever since we've been in office. But even so, there's a drop-down menu. You have to choose the specific crime you're searching for. And then the last one is there's got to be some accountability for the company itself. And for the first time, we have an agreement that they'll pay $100,000 if there's ever an infraction of any sort. And if Trump or anyone else comes to them to subpoena data, we do our own legal defense to fight that subpoena. They can't ever give up our data without us. And so those were all of the pieces of feedback I heard. We've addressed every one of those. When I talk to folks now and I explain that to them, they say, oh, okay, under those conditions, I'm much more comfortable.
Speaking of the $100,000 fine for every time Flock allows unauthorized access, you told 9 News that you and Flock's leadership have negotiated a unique, quote, Denver plan, which is what that was. But Councilmember Sarah Parody says you could have asked for this from the beginning. Why didn't you, and why are you doing it now?
Well, so when we had this debate in April, if you remember, I was the one that asked the city council to vote down the measure. They read that statement from me before, and I said, we have some real fixes we have to make. We have to change these practices. Give us some time to fix them. So that's what we did, is took the time to fix those things were concerning. I want to keep in mind, those were concerns about what could possibly happen. We still have no recorded evidence of any of those things happening in the city and county of Denver. But we wanted to, as my dad used to say, do both belt and suspenders. You wanted to be extra secure. And so that's why we changed and put in place all these protections now. The real question is, are they the right protections now? And I think they are. I've heard no one disagree with the substantive changes we've made. The question was, when should they have been made? As soon as we were aware that these were concerns, we heard people, we negotiated changes, and now we have a system that is closed to anyone outside of Denver police.
So you are listening to the people who have these concerns, who showed up at this town hall?
Absolutely. I mean, I talked to a bunch of people at the No Kings rally, and I asked them, what were your concerns? Their biggest concerns were, I want no federal agencies. I want no federal agents. I'm worried about like a sheriff in Texas who could access this. And so I said to them, well, what if we shut it off outside of Colorado? Great. What if we even shut it off in Colorado except for Denver? Even better. That idea actually first came up from one of the task force conversations where people said, we think you should shut it down to just to Denver. So we've been hearing that feedback. We've made dramatic changes. And this allows us over the next 4 or 5 months to test this new system, the new Denver model. And if it doesn't work to our satisfaction, then we won't go forward.
Well, it's interesting you brought up the task force. I think that touches on the other criticism I've heard in the last week. I know Serena Gonzalez-Gutierrez, at-large city council member, was on the task force. She feels like she's been shut out. And this is another whole batch of questions we got was around the process for how these decisions have been made. A question from listener Ben P. really puts a fine point on it. This is about how council has voted against Flock, but you've been extending the contract at an amount just under the threshold that would require council approval. And Ben's question is, in a city that just had a massive protest around executive power, how are you comfortable with your decision?
Yeah, first of all, this decision last week did not extend any contract or any dollars. So that original extension was back in April. And that is exactly within our executive power. That's exactly how the city operates, is to not approve anything above $500,000.
Previously, the contract was $660, and you set it at you negotiated a lower rate. And people say that you seem to be doing this, so council didn't have to weigh in.
So no, we negotiated exactly what the law required, which is you cannot issue a contract more than this amount. And so we did not issue a contract more than that amount. We asked council for feedback on it, as we did. We made dramatic changes after they asked for it, and will not pay another dollar to the company until we test this system and see if we want to use it. So I think that is exactly within the parameters of the law. I think when you're talking about a president who's weaponizing the Department of Justice, or who's, letting Bitcoin CEOs buy their way into pardons, or taking people off the street without due process and disappearing them to El Salvador, those two conversations should never happen in the same sentence. Like, we can all agree that behavior is absolutely illegal and unconstitutional. Everything we've done is entirely within the law, and it's been within the process we asked for when we asked them to vote the contract down. As we said, give us some time to try to build a better system that are responsive to these very valid concerns. We've now built that better system that we can test to make sure it meets our expectations and theirs.
So you're not you don't think, you haven't gone around city council, you just reject that allegation?
I do. We asked them to vote the measure down. We asked to give us some time to come up with a better system. We've come up with a better system, and now we have a chance to pilot this at no cost, which is entirely what the law allows and requires in Denver. And if there is going to be a new cost, we will bring it back to council, and they'll have to vote to pass it.
I have to say, I watch a lot of what's happening in Chicago right now and how their mayor is responding. And I could see where Denverites might be concerned. What if we're next, right? We've already labeled ourselves a sanctuary city. What's happening in Chicago, in Portland, that could happen to us. I could see where folks might be concerned that this is where those things intersect and that flock data could be accessed by the government in some capacity.
Yeah, so I think the key is we are very focused on not having National Guard or the Trump administration come to Denver. We're taking a lot of actions to avoid that. And I've been in close touch with both folks in Chicago and seen what's happening in places like D.C. And what you have is in places like D.C., you did have the police department, which became a fully functioning arm of the federal government. And they had, I saw myself, Metro D.C. police officers driving around ICE officers in masks with no ID. That will never, ever, ever, ever happen in Denver because we have a city law that prohibits it. We have a state law that prohibits it. And let me remind folks, no one has been clearer than me about protecting and supporting migrants in the city. I will say no one has been more staunch in their defense of migrants than the Denver Police Department. We have a captain on our watch right now who took 3 bullets in the back because he was defending a migrant shelter one night when an anti-migrant activist came in to shoot up that center. And instead he was there and took 3 bullets to save the lives of the people inside that facility. So I think no one has been more supportive of the newcomers than our police department has. And now we have double protections to make sure they couldn't penetrate the system without our knowledge.
So you mentioned this no-cost contract for this. I think you're talking about the first responder drones, this new thing that's going to be happening in Denver. Is that right?
No, that's separate. This is just what we've done. And again, because we were looking at severing the contract, not partnering with Flock, looking at other vendors. And we said for you to continue to do business, you'd have to meet all these criteria we have about safety and security. Mm-hmm. And we'd have to know that it's going to work to our satisfaction on civil rights. And so they committed to build that model for us and to say, let us show you that it works and we won't charge you a dime. Let's see if we can show you that it works, then you'll invest. If you don't, we walk away.
So this a list of criteria, that's interesting. You're talking about these negotiations you're having with the Flock company, I assume. Can we see that list of criteria? I don't know if I've seen that. I'd love to know what you're asking of them and what you're trying to establish with them as guidelines. Yeah,
we can release that. It's in the contract extension, the no cost extension we just did, but it includes all the items I just named for you around no access outside of the state, no access outside of Denver, only a Denver drop-down menu. You have to list the specific crime. So we've gone above and beyond to make sure that there's no one that can have access. So those are all the components, but we can certainly show you the contract.
I think that would be really helpful because I think part of the issue is like people are having a trust problem. Like I think people have heard your defense of Flock, like it makes the city safer. There's all these statistics that are getting better. But then there's also people who are like seeing all these changes and responding to concerns. And they're like, well, how is this decision getting made? What are the mayor's red lines? So yeah, if we could see that.
Yeah, I think on the substance of the argument, I think
that.
All the arguments I've heard now are about process, not about the substance of what this actual change does, which we think addresses exactly the feedback people gave us. So would love for people to see that and read it, because I think what you'll find is we agree with you. We wanted more protections, and that's why they're in place.
Well, I don't know if it addresses all the concerns. Some of the concerns are just like against surveillance generally. I think some people just don't like the idea that law enforcement is going to have all this cutting edge technology and be able to send drones in to do who knows what. People have seen RoboCop. It's scary. So that's why I wanted to ask you about your long-term vision for like how technology fits into law enforcement and your vision of the future of Denver.
Yeah, and let me actually add one thing, because I think this is also a misperception I find among residents is people think that the license plate reader cameras, which are what we're calling Flock, are the same as speed cameras, right? If you don't get a speeding ticket, it is a photo of your face behind the wheel and your car. I know because I've had this before where someone else was using my car and got a ticket. This is not that. There is no photo of your face. There's no photo of who your passenger is, if it's your boyfriend or girlfriend or mistress. None of that is in the photo. It's literally a reader of the license plate where we say, oh, your car got stolen, Bree. What's your license plate? Let us see if we can find that license plate. And so I think that's what we want to do, is to use it to increase safety in places that don't violate people's civil rights. And I think in public, you don't have an expectation of general privacy if you're walking down, if you're driving through an intersection, but we actually don't go that route. We're just saying, let's look at the license plate. We want to look at ways that we can, to answer your first question, how can
the big picture,
what is the big picture? I think the big picture is we want to be able to use technology to keep the city safe in a way that still protects everyone's civil liberties. I think there is a way to do both.
let's move on to the bond.
Great.
So the Vibrant Denver bond has been your big project this year. Denverites are voting on it right now.
Yes, ballots on your kitchen table.
You have about a week. What lessons did you learn from the failure of your affordable housing sales tax proposal that you applied to the Vibrant Denver bond campaign this year?
Yeah, I think a couple. One was we wanted to do as thorough and broad of a public engagement as we could on this. I think people's feedback was that the housing measure felt like it came too fast and it was too complex information to understand in a small amount of time. So I think we've had the most public engagement in this bond of any bond in history. We had more than 7,000 Denverites who were involved in this bond. They gave feedback on surveys. We had more than 50 public meetings. We had subcommittees with residents on it. We had executive committees with the residents on it. And that's led to, I think, a really great outcome of packages. And part of the feedback we got was people were frustrated the last bond took so long, that you voted for a measure and you voted for a fire station in your neighborhood that didn't break ground until 9 years later. And so this one we shortened to say it's only 6 years, not 10, to get it completed faster. We reduced the number of projects, so it's about 60, not around 500, because that means we know we can deliver on these and deliver on time. And I think we got really great ideas from around the city. So in a moment where you feel like democracy doesn't work that well, to watch strangers sit down in a school cafeteria, come up with an idea, submit it, and then have it show up on a bond package 5 months later, to me is a good example of democracy working. So that involvement has been much better. We think it's important. People said these are hard economic times. We don't want to pay more taxes. And so this is not a tax increase. That was important. So we think those two things have been big improvements. And we took a lot of things that we didn't think we would have on the bond when we started, but public output was strong enough that we changed course.
If people do say no, would you look into reducing the property tax that we currently pay to pay off old bonds?
No, because the short answer is we have a dedicated mill levy that we use to pay off all of our debt across the city. And so the reason why this doesn't increase taxes, nor if it failed would it drop taxes, is we have a ledger where we track all the debt that the city takes on. And whenever we pay off debt, it creates capacity to increase borrowing without increasing our payments.
Yeah.
So even if this bond didn't pass, we still have another 15 or so years of debt to pay off at the current schedule. And so maybe instead of that debt being paid off in 20 years, it's paid off in 15. So maybe there's a chance 15 years from now, the mill levy could drop as opposed to now, but there would be no immediate change in the lifetime of my administration, whether we passed it or didn't pass it.
I do think some Denverites would like that, though. I mean, if the choice was between lower taxes and debt for projects.
I will tell you, one of the things we did this year that didn't gain a lot of attention in the budget is we have a bunch of mill levies that we could activate without a vote of the people because we've been storing them. When property taxes went up, we did not activate mill levies. Some council members really wanted us to do that, to increase property taxes to balance the budget. We refused to do that because we did not think we should pass on more property taxes. But there were a lot of folks who advocated that we have these mill levies sitting there. We could have raised $20 or $30 or $40 million more by increasing people's taxes, and we chose not to do that.
Interesting. I wonder how Denverites would have felt about that, because our property taxes are relatively low compared to other places around the country.
They are relatively low, but I think I've not heard anyone in Denver saying they want to pay more property taxes, because even if our rates are low, when the valuation of your house goes up dramatically, the amount you pay each year still goes up if the rate is still low. So this seems like it's been kind of a tough year. It seems like some folks have turned on you in a big way publicly. We talked to clerk and recorder Paul Lopez. You've had some outspoken critics over the layoffs and the budget cuts we were talking about. I wonder, are you worried at all about the Vibrant Denver bond? Two things. I mean, one is this is the nature. There's a King quote I love, which is the true measure of a leader is not where you stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where you stand in moments of challenge and controversy. Right? None of us at the city chose to have an economic crisis that led to having to balance a budget. None of us ever signed up for that. But as a leader, you don't get to choose the moments you live in. You have to lead in those moments. And so you have to make hard decisions like making budget cuts and like right-sizing the budget and eliminating positions and sometimes, heaven forbid, laying off people. That is never fun, but is what you're called to do if you really want to lead. And that's true for every independently elected agency. You have to be able to make hard decisions in tough times and cut your budgets even if you don't want to. So I stand by those decisions. I'm proud of them. I think on the bond, we think there is support for it, but I think the bigger concern we see is people are frustrated with government in general right now, and they don't often distinguish between the two. It's pretty hard if you're watching a federal government that's shutting down and you have 100,000 Denver residents who won't even be able to get even access to basic food by next week. It's easy to say, why would I trust the government generally to take on more resources? I think we're really trying to say this is the moment to separate those governments that are going to work hard to deliver resources for you and be responsive to you from those that are not. And we think that this is a moment you do want to bet on Denver, and you do want to be able to say we can control our own destiny, and we don't need the National Guard or anyone else coming here. We actually want to make sure we can take care of our own resources despite the federal threats. You see a lot of cities and nonprofits, colleges, other facing massive threats of federal funding if they don't change their values. We're not going to change our values on immigration, on DEI, on LGBTQ rights. And so that means we'll risk losing federal benefits. But we think if you want to stand up for your rights and stand up for Denver's values, the way to do that is to make sure we can control our own fate.
Another question about the ballot. It's been almost a year since you signed off on Denver's ban on flavored tobacco. Some business owners who hope voters repeal this ban say it's eliminating $13 million in sales tax revenue. Has that argument made you rethink your decision at all, given the layoffs and the budget cuts?
It hasn't, but I know this was a hard issue. This is, I say there's a difference between problems when I talk to our team, difference between problems and dilemmas. A problem is something you can just fix. A dilemma is you have two competing values on both sides, and you have to manage those values. You can't say all liberty or all security. It has to be some combination of the both. And this one is, yes, the value is we absolutely want to support small businesses in every way that we can. And the other one is we want to avoid young people getting hooked on what could potentially be a life-threatening habit for them and could both drive massive costs up in our healthcare system, but really kill people. And so that was a trade-off here. Our hope is that this is a common sense strategy to say we think that you can still choose to vape and not need to have raspberry grapefruit as the option that you choose to vape with. And adults can choose that. But if we do have even marginal decrease, as the research shows, in the number of kids that will take it up and keep it, I think that's a win for us. We're going to do everything we can to bend over backwards to help those retailers with other ways we can drive more traffic to them. I do think that decreasing homelessness helps them. We think decreasing crime helps them. We think more people that can afford to live in the city helps them. More people that want to come as tourists to the city helps them. We think things like a women's soccer franchise and a new Broncos stadium helps them. We think having Sundance come to Colorado helps them. Those things are all not just about fun, positive Denver vibes. They're about driving revenue to the city that drive revenue to small businesses. So I see this as a dilemma that was the trade-off, but I think it's the best of the two options, and we got to help support them to recover.
We've seen you doing bartending stints on Colfax to help out Colfax businesses. Are we going to see you in vape shops? Are you going to be
selling something else?
Are you going to sell whippets?
I have not signed up for that part yet, although I will say we are mostly on an exclusive Colfax date night strategy right now. My wife and I, we're doing a lot of restaurants on Colfax.
Not the after-hours whippet circuit that Paul is on?
Yeah. Not as much. I haven't gotten that invite yet directly, but I guess I could pitch her on it and see how it goes.
Go do some late night whippets. Okay, great. Sounds like a fun
Just
night.
sell some
Sounds
late
like a fun night.
Yeah.
Sell some late night whippets. Hey, look, I don't know what we're doing. Let's move on. Another topic, the 2026 budget we've been talking about.
Yes.
One of the criticisms I've heard is that unlike past mayors faced with tough economic times, you seem to have not asked, or at least there's been no reporting. And I asked Fire Chief Desmond Fulton this. He said he couldn't recall. But it seems like you have not asked Fulton and the fire department or Ron Thomas at the police department to delay raises for their staff. Is that true? Have you asked?
I'm really glad that you asked that. Because what I did, this is very important, what I did is went to those teams and said, we have to figure out how to balance this budget and how to make reductions in what you're currently spending, which they did. And we said, among those, we should prioritize whether you want to either keep the raises coming that are coming and cut other things or not pay those raises to protect current programs. What they chose and we chose to do was, because it is critically important to fill these public safety roles, particularly in the police department, and keep them filled, is to invest in salaries, but take cuts in other parts of the departments to be able to balance those out. So they had to absorb all those costs directly. Those raises are not being paid by the housing department or by the Parks and Rec team. They're being absorbed by taking deeper cuts within the departments. That was a priority they shared and I shared.
They're not taking cuts in the fire department. Their budget's going up.
Well, they're mostly flat from year to year, but they were on trajectory to make expansions of $2, $5, $6 million that they had to absorb all those. They had to absorb both the new contracts, which are increases. Then they had to absorb any other program costs that were increasing. And so they had to take cuts just to stay flat because they were projected to grow in much more significant ways, particularly including those contracts. So that was a proactive decision we made to say, we want to invest in attracting great officers and great firefighters and great sheriffs. And to do that, we have to make cuts in other places, and we found the ways to do that.
Right. And just to be clear, the proposed budget was an increase, not mostly flat maybe, but it was an increase. And you're saying
talking about for their salaries or for the total budget?
The total budget for the department.
It is a very small, it might be less than 1%, but it is a very small, it is mostly flat on the overall year-over-year expenditures. Keep in mind, by the way, police department has costs like every time residents choose to have a great No Kings March, which is fantastic. That requires a whole set of overtime costs for police officers to staff that in addition to all the rest. We've had protests every single week of the last 2 years almost.
Yeah.
Those are huge increased costs for the department, which is why they've all been so safe and productive and people feel seen and heard and supported as they should be. Those are not costs you can budget, the total number of protests in 2026. And so there are places where those departments absorb really significant costs the city has as a way to keep people safe in a way that you might not ever see. But you wonder why your grandma came down to No Kings and had a great time and went home. It's because we had 100 off-duty officers that were there doing overtime.
I feel like you can make the same argument about the clerk and recorder's office and the election systems.
Oh, completely different.
The politics totally changes their needs.
No, completely different. You look at the way that works in regular cycles for clerk and recorder's office is turnout is driven demonstrably based on what year of the cycle it is. Are you in a presidential year? Are you in an off year like 25? Are you in a midterm election? 26 is a midterm election just like 22. This is a significant increase in the budget over 2022 with the same turnout model projected. And we just allocated for all that he said was potentially increased costs of postage and of paper was the only thing that he's actually enumerated. We just allocated $800,000 to solve for the postage and paper problem. There is no change for the staffing need at any of those sites over a 2022 projection, which this will be an increase from. So that's a simple problem that is not complicated math, and it doesn't change any part of the election infrastructure.
Let's move on. You proposed a few weeks ago to use the Downtown Development Authority to buy the Denver Pavilions for $37 million. I have to say, I watched them build this thing. I was perplexed by it then. It at one point had a Nike Town. At one point it had a Uniqlo. It had these really big draws. That's not necessarily the case right now. Why $37 million for a dead mall?
Okay, I'm really excited that you asked this because you and I care about the details of how it's structured, and it is built to the reason why it has been hard to be successful in its current structure. Keep in mind, pre-COVID, for the last 5 years, it actually was doing quite well pre-COVID. So even though it's quirky in ways you might not have loved, it was doing financially well in 2019. COVID and 16th Street construction have really killed it. But the key are two things. One is it was valued at $140 million. So we bought it at 37, which is about 25 cents on the dollar. So that's a good investment for us. But the importance is, think about the backside of the pavilions, that big, nasty
giant empty
wall, giant empty parking lot.
With the world's worst architecture that is literally nothing.
Exactly.
It's a wall.
So the reason why it's been hard to make it succeed in the last 20 years is those parking lots are owned by a different owner than the pavilions. And as you talk to any developer in the city, they've tried for 20 years to buy those lots and the pavilions, and they couldn't. And
because parking lots make a lot of money for people.
Yes, so we bought the lots first. The Downtown Denver Authority bought the lots first in the first DDA transaction. And that allowed us, and by the way, that parking lot owns 2/3 of the parking revenue underneath the pavilions. So by getting the lots first, that gave us the ability to buy the pavilions and them together. And the reason why, Bree, this solves your problem is the second and third floor retail is the hardest part of the pavilions.
Absolutely.
What you want to do now that we own the lots on the back is you would build either a hotel on the back or an apartment complex on the back, of which your exit from the second and third floor of that complex would be into the pavilions. So think about like when you go to Vegas and you're on the second floor of a hotel and you walk out of your hotel room, there's suddenly just a shopping mall there.
Sure.
It's an activation into those sites. So now you could activate the second and third floors from that complex as well as from the 16th Street side, and you would unify a project to develop the spaces together, and the cash flow of the parking lots work for us. So what we'll do is put out an RFP for any visionary builder who says, tell us what your dream is now that we've assembled all 4 blocks together. They'll pitch us in a bunch of ideas. We'll either joint venture it together or we'll resell it to someone else who will build that. But the reason we had to do that is what happens is when companies like this get in distress, what they do is either just shut down because it saves them money. It's cheaper to close it than to operate it. Or if they're just trying to bring in cash flow, they just put 4 7-Elevens around the first floor. We couldn't have either of those outcomes for the pavilions. And so we wanted it so we could control both who the vendors that go in there are, what the long-term plan is, and how it serves the broader city of Denver. One of the reasons why I think the owner of those lots finally sold to us is because they also own a couple of other major buildings in upper downtown that they want to rent office space in. Oh. They want downtown to come back. And they knew if we were going to make a comprehensive play to bring upper downtown back, even though they lost a lot of money on this deal, it might help us shore up upper downtown in a way that's good for all of us.
And I should correct myself. My husband would be mad if I said it was a dead mall. We were actually there this weekend.
Thank you.
And
I shouldn't have conceded that. Thank you to your husband for defending us.
He was really, really excited actually when I told him what the DDA does and what its hopes are and the types of things that are coming to downtown. But it's just, I think it's one of those you have to go down there to see it kind of things.
Yes.
The other thing I would just say is if you're going to put apartments on the back of it, just a thought, if they're affordable to the folks that work the retail on the other side of that.
A big part of the
groundbreaking idea.
Yes, a big part of the DDA is we are all in on doing more affordable housing. We're going to try to bring 4,000 new apartments to downtown, and with the goal of 2,000 of them being permanently affordable. But the other 2,000 right now in downtown, a lot of the market rate units are affordable because there's not as much demand right now. But that is exactly the goal. And I will say we've done some other things. Like if you're there, you can now sit outside and have a beer on the patio or have a glass of wine and sit out there. And so we've activated that as a kind of open
people were doing that when we were down there.
Open container park. And so we think there are some really fun ways to re-envision that. And we want that to be the anchor for upper downtown, the way Union Station is for lower downtown or Larimer Square is. Those we need 3 or 4 of those along the mall, which the goal would be Union Station, Larimer Square, now Skyline Park, Glen Arm at the Pavilions, and then connect the Pavilions up through over into Civic Center. So that's one easy, walkable public experience.
And I think Hot Topic is considered a legacy business at this point. Because I went in there looking for a System of a Down shirt for my 4-year-old, and they didn't have any small enough, but I thought, this place is still here, and it's still bumping. And
I mean, people are still going
probably
to...
an anchor tenant at
People
this
are
point.
still going to prom dinners at Maggiano's every weekend. So it is still there.
The Union Station comparison is interesting. I've just been noticing this lately. People are there's a certain way people refer to parts of the city, and like this Union Station is one of them. You'll hear people say it's Denver's living room. And I heard Bill Mosher, who's doing the DDA stuff in your office, he said, we want the pavilions to be like Union Station. And I thought, okay, next time the mayor's on, I want you to finish this sentence. If Union Station is Denver's living room, the pavilions is Denver's
game room.
Game room?
It's the game room.
Okay.
It's like a cool bar in the basement at your grandma's house.
Yeah, it might be like this place, actually. I haven't thought about that longer than the 1 second that you asked me. We should think about that brand. But I do think it is another joyful place you would come as a destination in downtown where you'd come and keep coming back. So you can go to a great bar, you can come to see a show, you can come to go to the movies, you can come to bowl, you can come to find great restaurants that you love. But it is a destination you would come to. Like right now, you're not exactly sure what you're going to do when you go to Union Station or when you go to Larimer Square, but you just go there and you kind of figure it out, And I think that's we want downtown to feel more that way, which is I describe it as a place you can get lost in. Like you're just going to come and kind of hang out and not sure where the night will take you or where the Saturday afternoon will take you. That is our hope.
Well, Mayor Mike Johnston, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That was so fun. How did we get through a full time? You didn't ask about the Broncos. I'm shocked.
Next time.
Oh, and by the way, today is the last day to enter to win our CityCast Denver Ultimate Denver Staycation Weekend. The winner will get a weekend's worth of free Denver experiences, including 2 nights at the Populous Hotel, rooftop dinner for 2, tickets to the Fillmore and Meow Wolf, gift cards to Wax Trax and Levin Deli, and so much more. Find us on Instagram at CityCast Denver and be sure to enter before 6 p.m. tonight. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed the show, why don't you take a minute to tell Flock CEO Garrett Langley about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See you later.